we continue with our workshops. This one focuses on sampling and sampling designs. We'll focus on this topic today. And I do believe you are ready to engage. I've got two sources that I've put here on the screen. I did not put the third one, but you would see the discussion that Agu Boshin puts mainly on how to get a representative sample. It does not only belong to him. Many more authors have argued about it, and I'll share his views. And I just want to hear what you say from your side if you have studied. I say if you don't agree with me or you don't agree with a specific author, then you should have a view. And it is something that you need to use in your documents. But you must also be in line with a specific author. As we always mention, you must defend the choices that you make because you must provide a rationale why you have chosen a specific approach instead of the other one. You downplay a specific approach because the approach that you choose should assist you in achieving the study objectives. That is done through showing that there is literature that supports it. So literature should be there to support decisions and the choices that we make. And a lot of books are available. So what we have used today should be taken as guidelines and as something that we need to use to stimulate discussions. We have said when you finish your reports, particularly if you are at a D level, sometimes you would be required to defend the output, the product, the research report. So if you have been able to defend your choices and if the work is yours, that is, if it has not been written by somebody for you, you will be able to defend and you will not be shamed. So you have to own the product. Our one-on-one sessions are continuing. Every week I have got sessions that I actually hold with people who want to engage with me. The sessions happen on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You use the email, my email there to book one-on-one, and you copy the center. You can copy Cecily Ndelwa so that the center can schedule the meetings for us. It's not me who schedules, it's not yourself who schedule. And apart from booking one-on-one sessions, you can also share your documents with me. I comment on your documents, to share my views. And if you are happy, then you can adapt and revise your documents accordingly. And if you don't like the comments, you can still go your way. But as long as we have conscientized you, we have seen you, we have shown you the other views, apart from your own view. In this regard, you can share your chapter 1, you can share your research proposals, you can share chapters, all the other chapters that you want to share with us. Even if it is just a concept that you don't understand, you want us to engage, we can engage. You can also write an email to ask a question or to share what you think your views are and you want a comment, I'll be able to do that. And sometimes when I've made comments on the documents, there are follow-up meetings as one-on-ones. And in those, I clarify my comments, and this allows you to go back and take a decision to revise or to go your own way. Today, we've got 3 objectives that we'll focus on in terms of sampling and the sampling design. In the workshop, we'll try to see how we can explain a number of systematic approaches to sampling. We will see if we cannot present an overview of the process and logic of sampling and a description of basic building blocks of sampling theory. these statements might appear jargon, but as we continue, you will see how the workshop links to them. But we will also describe the most common sampling designs that can be used in social science research. In the presentation that I had 2 years ago, in 2023, by the way, I used both probability and non-probability sampling designs. And then I noted that I'm not good at the probability sampling. So what I will do today, I'll make reference to probability sampling, but lean much more on a non-probability sampling, because non-probability sampling is in line with qualitative research. And at the end of this workshop, we should be able to understand the distinction between probability and non-probability sampling designs. That one we will do. It's not very simple. It's not very difficult. We can do it at the beginning of the study. I've got towards the end of the presentation a few slides. I think there are 5 that where I present a project where I mixed non-probability sampling and probability sampling designs. And then it might have been because I was not aware, or I didn't understand or master designs by sampling by then, or it's also possible. I think a mixture, I think is also possible, because the research design, the research approach was mixed research approach, and in mixed research approach, you use both qualitative and quantitative data collection. So then even the sampling design can be mixed, because to collect qualitative data, you can use non-probability sampling designs. And to collect quantitative data, you can use probability sampling designs. So if we don't run out of time, I will try to show you how I mixed that one. And sometimes if I see that we're running out of time and we are very far from that, I'll skip some slides in order to run to that part where I think I've mixed the two approaches. But we should learn how to decide on the best non-probability sampling designs to use for the selected research topics that we have. We are, from a qualitative point of view, you are not restricted only to talk about qualitative. If you have got good background on quantitative research and you want to talk about quantitative sampling designs, you can talk about them here. Because I will also make reference to them. But if you master them, you want to share your experience and your understanding, please do so. So other colleagues would then support you, or they will ask you questions. And I'm saying it because I don't master that. Some of the aspects, if you are from a quantitative background, you will find that you understand them better than I do. But in the approach that I would adopt is this: that in the introduction slides, terminology that will be used will be generic to sampling. So in other words, I would not be talking about one approach. It will be, the terminology will apply to both probability and non-probability sampling strategies. But secondly, I will try to present slides that explain probability sampling. Yeah, I will. That is quantitative sampling designs. I will have a few slides that talk about it a little bit, not into details. Then thirdly, I will present slides on non-probability sampling designs. Those are they would constitute the greater portion of the workshop. Then at the end, I will share an example that mixes both probability and non-probability sampling design. This is what I was saying. Now, sampling is one of the most important endeavors in the social research process, and it is therefore important to understand this concept. Just hold on for a moment. I want to see where if I did share with you the, okay, did I share these slides? If I did share this, is fine, but I wanted to show that it is National School of Government and Aguboshin, the two authors from where I've borrowed concepts. We are saying sampling is one of the most important endeavors in the social research process, and it is therefore important to understand this concept. We have said it, we might have made reference to it when we were speaking in other workshops, but we did not go into details. And I didn't bother because I knew that this workshop was coming. And there are some questions that I thought I would answer today. I again forgot about them, but I know them, I used them, and I have got resources on that. If I don't deal with them today, then I must promise that next time I will start with them. When we talk about social research, we often talk about making observations. We can, however, not observe all of the actions relevant to this social phenomenon. A process of selecting observations is therefore needed, which is termed sampling. So sampling is to take a portion or part of what we want to study. And in quantitative language, they think that that which we sample should be representative of the broader population, target population, study population. Because in quantitative research, they think that the results and the outputs should be generalized. And this is why they've got the sampling designs allow them to generalize. But in qualitative research, you sometimes would not be able to generalize because the important aspects is not to, you're not chasing the numbers. You will see, we'll refer to this later at a later stage. We're not chasing the numbers, we are actually chasing the quality. Whereas in quantitative research, they deal with the numbers, how many, and this is the reason why, how representative the sample is. So we are saying we need to take part of what we see as the target population or the study population, study that one with an understanding that it will shed light on the phenomenon under investigation. Whether we generalize or whether we don't generalize, that is immaterial. But we are saying you cannot study everything because sometimes the study population is very huge. The main purpose of sampling is to make generalization to people and events that have not been observed, mainly in quantitative studies. A sample is defined as a specific subset of a population observed in order to make inferences about the nature of the total population itself. This is in quantitative research because it has got a purpose of generalization. The reasons for sampling. Why is it important to use samples? The most important reason for sampling is feasibility. So we should be able to handle the work at hand. We should be able to collect data that we want to use. So if we do, we are going to deal with the entire population, it won't be feasible data, or it won't be easy for us to collect data. Or otherwise, even if we try to collect data, we will collect data that we will not be able to analyze. We will not be able to manage, and it will be difficult to handle. You see, dealing with a very large data or just with everything is costly and it is impractical to study because you will be dealing with the entire population. Then that is the reason why sampling is used to save time and resources. We don't have all the time, we don't have all the money to use or to waste while we're studying everything else. But the budget that might be there and the time that might be available might allow us to take part of it to just sample, to actually deal with a part of the study population. Although sampling is more technical than other research processes, it is not that complicated a concept. In fact, In our everyday lives, we speak about populations all the time. And indeed, it means we deal with part of some samples and we are doing sampling unaware. We might talk about poor service delivery. This is just an example. We might talk about poor service delivery of local government services in South Africa, but rarely do we do this on the basis of a full data set. We're not talking about all the municipalities. And you might find that a person that is saying this, mentioning this statement, might be referring to an experience that comes from either one or two such municipalities that are failing to deliver good services. It is unlikely that all municipal services in South Africa are poor. Some would be doing good, some will be poor, some will be between good and poor. So our statement would not be correct if we say all the municipalities deliver poor service. We only base our assessment on a sample of the particular local government in the area in which we live. This is what I was saying. If I'm in the Limpopo, I stay under the Thulamela local municipality. It is under Vhembe district municipality. So my experiences would be mainly under the Vhembe district municipality, but in a small municipality under it, which is Thulamela. So my experience would be there. In other words, in the entire South Africa, I might have sampled Thulamela local municipality to make a point of reference. Now, what is a population? A study population is defined as the aggregation of elements from which the sample is actually selected. In other words, the population is a social science research project. In a social science research project is the universe from which the sample will be selected. You have got subjects, or you've got a society or a community where you want to draw a sample. So that could be what can be referred to as a population, a study population. Other authors use the term population and the universe as interchangeable concepts, but some authors distinguish between a population and a universe. To those who make a distinction between study population and the universe refers to all potential subjects who possesses the attributes the researcher is investigating. So this is how other people define it. But one must first clearly identify the target population, that is the population to which you would like to generalize your results. To define the target population, one must keep in mind the scope of the planned generalization and the practical requirements of drawing the sample. There are two defining characteristics that are always implicitly or explicitly part of the target population. These are geographic and time reference. Geographic, we can refer to South Africa. So the study population is geographically defined within the context of the South African boundaries, or City of Joburg, or Western Cape, or Limpopo, or Gauteng province. So that is how we can define the population in terms of its geographical location. We are studying people who are in the city of Joburg or people who are in Gauteng province.
Oh, go read it.
Most studies would say, for instance, if it is in the Limpopo province, then, and I'm studying municipalities, then I could choose 3 or 4 that are representing the province. And if I'm studying provinces in South Africa, then I could choose either 2 or 3 provinces that represent Africa, South Africa. So I would be dealing with my study population from a geographic point of view. So within a specified geographical area, I would collect data. So my sample will come from that study population. My sample comes from South Africa. My sample of provinces from South Africa, and my sample of district municipalities from the Limpopo province. That is how a population can be defined geographically. But there is also a definition of population in terms of time and time frames. Time referent refers to the distinctive time frame of the study. The apartheid era would refer to the time in South Africa, it would refer to the time before 1994. The post-apartheid era would refer to the period after 1994 in South Africa. The fiscal year 2000 to the fiscal year 2005 would refer to a 5-year period. We can talk about the 2025 academic year. So in other words, I'm only researching the activities of academic literacy in 2025. I want to investigate how many shops have been conducted. I want to investigate how many participants were there. I want to investigate how many topics were treated. I also want to know how many students have requested for one-on-one, and how many students have shared their documents with the facilitator only in the 2025 academic year. So I would be studying, determining my population. So my population is only those students that were there in the 2025 academic year. Amongst them, do we have females? Amongst them, do we have people who are in Gauteng? Do we have people in Gauteng who are at Mamelodi? Do we have people who are at the city center, CBD? Do we have people who are in Pretoria West or Centurion or something like that? So the population will be defined in terms of the academic year 2025. So I can still zoom it. I can still say I also do it geographically and time frame wise. So that is dependent on the choice of the researcher. The important aspect is to be able to define these things and be able to present them and justify why you make those choices. What do you want to find out? What is your research question and what are your objectives? The second step is to construct a sampling frame. The sampling frame denotes the set of all cases from which the sample is actually selected. A sample frame can also be defined as a list or quasi-list of elements from which a probability sample is selected. If I'm studying the district municipalities in the Limpopo, then my list of all the district municipality is referred to as a sampling frame. The same applies to the district municipalities and the metros in Gauteng. Gauteng has got district municipalities and has got metros. Your metros, you know them. You know City of Joburg, City of Tshwane, you know Ekurhuleni. There are the 3 metros. Then you've got Western District Municipality and you've got Citibank District Municipality. What is the other one? I think these are the only 5 major areas. So those 5 can be listed as part of the sampling frame. A list of those is referred to as a sampling frame. The sampling frame is not a sample, although many students confuse the two. A sample is a small portion of the total set of cases. If I've got 5 district municipalities in the Limpopo province, so my sample, if I take the Sekhukhune district municipality and the Mopani district municipality, then I've sampled 2 of them. Then 2 of those constitute a sample. A sample is a small portion of the total set of cases, events, or objects which together comprise the subject of the study. So I will study what I have identified as a sample. I will study the 2 district municipalities, Capricorn and Mopani. So that is what they refer to in this second statement. But there are 2 requirements for constructing a sample frame. You have got listing all cases, you must list all of them, providing a rule defining of membership. In qualitative research, they refer to criteria for inclusion and exclusion. What makes the subjects eligible for inclusion in the sample? It is the characteristics, and those characteristics are based on the study objectives and what the researcher wants to achieve. Because in qualitative study, you would want to include subjects that will provide the relevant information. That is why if you are sampling, if you are going to include people as subjects and you're going to have interviews, you might sometimes want to include them purposefully based on what information they will provide. And that information should be relevant to the study objectives or to their, it must be able to assist in answering the research question. So when you define the rule of membership or developing the criteria for inclusion or exclusion, then you are going to use it to decide who is going to be included in the sample and who is going to be excluded. For an example, if a sample of first-year students at the University of South Africa is selected from the student roster, the roster itself is the sampling frame. I've already said this. If, for an example, the primary sampling unit for a complex population sample is the housing block, then the list of housing blocks comprises the sampling frame, either in the form of a printed booklet, a magnetic tape file, or a computerized record. These things would be available from the authorities or from the people that are managing the estate or the sites. In a City of Tshwane telephone survey of citizens, for an example, the sampling frame could consist of the city telephone book, which is another way where is a listing or the set of all telephone numbers with certain exchanges. These are the rules. So you should not be confused by the meaning of a sampling frame. It's not a framework, it is a frame. There is this, I want to pause when I finish these slides, the one that you see now, I'm going to pause so I can establish the extent to which we are moving together. But I've brought this slide so that up front, even before we could start talking about the different sampling strategies, whether probability or non-probability, there is something that I want to clarify here. It is the size of the sample, particularly in qualitative research. And one of the authors that I've quoted, that I've consulted, says, the consensus of many researchers on data saturation is that data saturation is a key driver for determining the adequacy of sample size in a qualitative case study. Despite this global consensus, some researchers describe data saturation as complex because the decision to stop data collection is solely dictated by the judgment and experience of the researchers. Other researchers claimed that guidelines for determining non-probability sample size used as an indication of data saturation are virtually non-existent, problematic, or controversial. And others claim that data saturation hitched to sample size is practically weak because data are never truly saturated, as there are always new data to be discovered. I did consult another author apart from this one, and that author was actually detailing, he just made research on the size of the sample, on qualitative research, and he wrote this article. He supports this argument that in qualitative research, mainly saturation is seen as an indication of data and sample size. In other words, when we see that we cannot collect any more, we don't come across any more new information in the data that we're collecting, then those that we've interviewed or from who we've collected data should suffice as a number that we've consulted. And I've noted here another one of these authors who says the sizes of the data can even start from 10 and it goes up to more than 100 people. I've seen that one, but I did not finish studying the document because I was a bit late trying to structure the presentation today. And we would continue to talk about this from now forever, because when we go to collect data and we analyze, this would come back to us. Let us not forget that. But I only wanted to make a point here that indeed there is no agreement. There are no general rules that say this is the size of the sample in qualitative research. And you might have read, you've got your own views or perspectives, or you might have had experience in collecting data, qualitative data. So you can share with us. And let me pause here so that we can start our discussions. And I give you an opportunity if you are ready to engage.
My question is very much still almost a continuation of my previous one, but now because we're discussing the sampling. So I'm thinking in this case, if I say my sample framework, my sample framework is the top 100 ICT companies that are listed in the JSE Stock Exchange as the framework. And then the sample is, if I do the randomization and I select the 50 that will come, would that be a sample from that framework?
I just have one question. What are we looking to measure in terms of the question regarding the sampling of the ICT companies? Because I think what we're looking to measure impacts sampling as well, because if it's more economic, you might tend to move towards probability sampling. If it's some other variable, you might tend towards a non-probability random sampling and things like that. So I guess the question I'm asking is, what are we measuring?
So we are coming up with a matrix. We're coming up with a matrix of project managers in the ICT sector. So to come up with that, we're looking at those top 100 JSE listed companies. So it goes into the competencies and the skill set to come up with the matrix.
You are a quantitative researcher, Kinemi.
Yes.
Okay. Shireen, you are good in quantitative research. Please assist.
Yeah, this would be a tough one because you probably can go random. You probably, I mean, for me personally, I would like to go stratify and random within the strata. But I'm more on the economic side. I tend to focus more of my attention on economic surveys, and that's why for me, probability would be the most representative. But it seems like your objective is not leaning towards that. So maybe strata and random sampling, might work for your survey. Just my opinion. I could be very much wrong, but just my opinion. Norivua.
Yes, thank you. You made reference to the sampling frame. Eh? You would have that list, the list of 100 top 100 companies is a sampling frame, and from it you draw a sample. Yeah. When you take 50, whether you are randomizing, whether you are systematically taking them, or however, actually you are sampling, and your sample would constitute of those 50 companies. That is how I see it.
Yes. I just wanted to confirm with regards to the sampling frame question, just a follow-up question on that. Do we need to somehow ensure completeness?
the way I understand it, it would depend on what you want. If you want to survey all 100 IT companies within the frame, then that would constitute a census. But if you want a small, if you just want to sample a proportion of that frame, then that's a sample itself. So it would depend whether you want a census or a sample.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm still not 100% sure in terms of Kineilo's when she mentions the I think something about the key performance for the project manager. So is it the actual the metrics? Yes, yes. Maybe can she, like just go a little bit into details, because at this stage, I think she is definitely on the quantitative part, but we must just, factor in that there's various types. Either she can use a table, a calculator. So I don't know. It's just that I wouldn't want to say something which is not really going to be of value and helpful.
Yeah. Do you want her to clarify what type of metrics?
Yes. And I think, because Shireen earlier on wanted to find out. So I'm also there, but my suspicion is I need to go a little bit deeper. So what exactly, what exactly is she trying to achieve with those project managers? If I'm asking the correct thing. Maybe let me bring everyone in. So there has been a couple of competency metrics that has been established just to determine the skills of project managers, being technical, behavioral, leadership, all the skills that makes a very good ideal project manager, which can be used when you're hiring project managers, or whether you assessing if your company has got the best skills, or whether you are identifying if there's a gap in the skills of the project managers. So I want to establish a comprehensive matrix that will bring in a lot of all these competencies, as well as bringing in the new ones that could have been brought in by AI or all these emerging technologies. Hence, then I go back to existing project managers that are there in the field to say, what is it that you've got to be able to identify the gap, or what is the literature saying based on what is available? Okay. And I even wrote there in the chat to say, is it making more sense now? Yes, I think so. More like you are trying to establish out of those 100 top 100 what the attributes of a competent project manager. In a way. Correct. Correct. No, that's fine. So the other thing then, in these top 100, then you'll need to probably, I think the ideal one would be the probability sampling, but then within a company, let's say now here you've got PwC as a company. Are you still now going to need to dwell deeper into establishing, the metrics maybe for the top performer, and maybe the not so top performer project management, like as in when you are now focusing on a certain company, the metrics itself, would you be wanting to to unpack further, look at like for example the quadrants, what makes attributes of a top performer, a low performer, mid performer? Okay, it will be a mix of skill set which will give me a very nice, rich research outcome. So it will be a mix of experienced PMs, intermediate, and junior ones, so that I can get a rich feedback out of this.
Okay. Sounds more towards probability, but probably stratified. I don't know, or clustering, somewhere there. Yeah.
I like this stratification because I want to make reference to it in one of the slides. That example that I want to show, I was trying to see if what I've done qualifies as a stratification. Because in stratification, in terms of Kinele, she would have this whole sample. The sample is made of 50 companies. But she can sometimes classify them in groups, maybe of 8 or of 4. Then she deals with them in terms of different levels and looking at different criteria or different attributes. But collectively, all of them would make a total sample. But if she has done it in stages, then she would be actually doing what you refer to as clustering. And I'm interested on that one. But thank you very much for all those inputs.
The simple question is, when do you start sampling? In your notes, in your slides, you referred to, or one of your bullet points referred to a situation where the population is so large that you want to take out a sample whose results will represent the whole population. Now, my debate with my previous institution was there is only 9 provinces. And in those 9 provinces in South Africa, each province has got only one department of education. Why would you want to sample if, when you deal with the whole population, the study samples itself? And this is what I mean when I say the study samples itself. You start off with the 9 provinces and one department of education, and you are dealing with one mandate of Department of Education. But your study reveals, or your data reveals, that not all provinces in all the 7 years time frame that you have chosen, or 8 years or 10 years, not all nine of them are needed for the study. You will only need 4 or 5. Then after the study has sampled itself, why would you still go on to sample from that 5?
I'm going to talk the layman's language because I'm not a quantitative researcher. But there is this thing, colleagues. Remember, if it was possible, it is necessary not to sample. Do you know that Stats Africa does not sample? They must go in all villages. They must just, okay, let's debate this. Quantitative researchers, does Stats SA sample, or they must just go in every household?
They go in every household.
You
and
see?
My study, just for context, it's not quantitative, it's qualitative.
Or is yours qualitative?
Qualitative. I'm just using the number of provinces and number of departments and one mandate of Department of Education. And I'm just selecting the last 8 years from the recent financial fiscal year, and then going back 8 years. That's all I'm doing.
No, there's nothing. Your number is very small. In qualitative research, if you can use this criteria of saturation is very, very good, and it's a good argument. I'm going to study it more so that in future when I run workshops, I can have a detailed discussion on it. But in qualitative studies, you don't need to study all, or we don't depend on numbers. Actually, the argument about numbers falls away. Our important interest is on the quality. That is where saturation is leaning towards. Do we have enough information? Can we answer the research question or not? Because there is a number of things that we need to consider. If we, there are, you see, the literature that I was studying was starting to get deeper, not only on it was going to consider even other aspects, such as what is the research objectives? What are the other characters? What do we want to satisfy by collecting data? If we satisfy that one, and then we find that out of the 9 provinces, 5 provinces satisfy the criteria. Is there a need for us to go and deal with the 4 and waste more time and waste more money? And at the end, you find the same results. Do you get the argument? If you will find the same results, what was the reason to go into higher numbers? And even if your studies was quantitative, I would tell you that 9 provinces are a very little number. You need to do 100%, because they have, in quantitative research, they could put percentage for you that if it is this amount, then 10% should be done. If this is amount, then 1% or 5% and so on. If it is this number, 100% or 75%, and so there are those suggestions in terms of quantity, because these people chase numbers. But the qualitative researchers don't want to know how many provinces they've collected. They want provinces that can provide the relevant information that they want. You might find that your research question does not relate to Limpopo and Eastern Cape because they're very poor, or even the Northern Cape because they are poor. Then they would want Gauteng, they would want Western Cape, they would want Free State, or they would want KwaZulu-Natal, which are better resourced or which are better in economics.
So mine is a little bit personal. It's based on the sampling, where in my initial draft, I used the 2 sampling method, which is purposive sampling and snowball sampling. I did that in the sense that in an informal settlement, sometimes you need to be referred because you might not fully understand the geographics of that place. Then I actually justified and I also saw another case study which used this approach, especially in informal settlement. However, the supervisors, they said I should not use both. I should stick to purposive sampling. Then my question then is like, how would you advise on how best to defend or justify sampling strategies in such context, especially working with supervisors who need more rigid approaches or methodology?
Okay, I have an advice. I've got examples where I've mixed. I've used systematic sampling. It was a mixed method research. Systematic sampling is there. Purposive sampling is there. Snowball is there. So I didn't care about that, and it is when I didn't have an experience. It was the first research project, but today I can argue that no, I don't think there's anything wrong, because the environment, the setting itself would determine. Actually, in the examples that I have here, I got them from NSGA. They show that I think it is terms referral or snowball. They say that if you don't know all the subjects, but you know some of them, you would go to those that you know. But in order to complete a sample and collect data, they can refer you to other people who you don't know, or to other subjects who you don't know, who are relevant to the study and who can provide insight into the study. So it's not your fault that you don't know everything, all subjects. If you go into the informal settlement, we know that informal settlement are not formalized. So you will also find that the households are not in a straight line. They don't have even, they are not serviced. They don't have roads, or they don't have electricity, or waterborne sewage system, something. They don't have that. When you go there, you're not aware of the things that are also good for you, and they are known by the residents there. So you should be referred. So snowball becomes very, very relevant. And I can argue, I don't know that person, I cannot fight a study leader, but they must read further, or they must understand the context, because research is actually done in a context. You are referring to an informal settlement. I referred my study. I conducted it in a rural area. That is why I said one day when the line was not, when the households were not in a straight line, I deviated from the systematic sampling, or I became creative. And in that case, I could collect data, but I defended when I wrote. Then if there are other authors that have used the same, or that speak about it as a possible approach, do use it. Maybe the study leader did not read enough. I don't know how to defend it, but I would write and tell him, no, other authors have used it, and it has been published, and mine has been passed. Maybe they must read my document.
Yeah, because like I didn't just do it on my own. I went on the literature and see that the number of case studies, especially in areas that are like informal settlements where you have to maneuver yourself inside, because even if you know the area or you went there and see, you never know the dynamics of informal settlements fully, especially if they are informal. A lot of things happen. So knowing maybe 5, 6, 7, it's good for you maybe to get another maybe 10, because now they can tell you can go there, you can move there, you can move there, because qualitative is interactive. You can speak with people, you can ask their names, greetings, even to ask about the weather. So they can even refer you to say, okay, now I think you need to go there. Now I think you need to go there. So that was also my argument, even bringing out why it was there, but they seem rigid today. We're not even welcoming the idea or given the chance to justify myself.
They must study further, man. I'm not a professor, but they must study further.
I wanted to encourage Ginelo in particular, but all of us can take from this, on her question about the research choice that she must make with regards to sampling. From my experience, all your research decisions you have to justify to the audience, whether it's going to be the supervisor, the people who are going to be listening to your presentation, or your examiners. So, for example, with the research methodology, you literally have to have even a separate list of your literature that you will review, because you will write a chapter depending on the intensity of your research. So I struggled, and I realized afterwards that I struggled because I had not read comprehensively on the subject matter. And I would encourage you to go back and read on these research methodologies, attend workshops, attend academic training where available, have chapters reviewed by someone else who's objective. For example, I sent my chapters to Dr. Korombi to give me feedback. I had a chance to have a vigorous discussion with him and justify my research decisions.
My question, Doc, is I'm just requesting clarity on the sampling frame. I'm researching universities, particularly postgraduate students. So now at the universities, their faculties, their colleges, or whatever the structure is. So what becomes my sample frame? Is it like master's students and doctoral students, or my sample frame is the universities themselves, or it is the faculties or colleges?
Sorry, no, I made a mistake. I actually missed something. What are you researching? You are researching universities.
Yes.
Okay. Your unit of analysis are universities. So it means your sample framework is a list of universities. How many universities do we have? Do we have 20 or 15 in South Africa? Then they are a sample framework from there, I want to study 4 of them or 20 of them, then I must sample 20 or 4.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. No, thank you so much, Doc.
Yeah, that is a sample framework. So if you were at UNISA and you were studying colleges, then you've got 7 colleges. Your 7 colleges are a sample frame.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Because
that's where I
they are
wanted
enlisted.
yeah, that's where I wanted the clarity on, because I thought that maybe if I've selected the 3 universities, then my sample frame would be, the universities become the population, and then the sample frame becomes the faculties. But I think we have clarified it enough.
Yes.
I have one comment and permission to play devil's advocate, if I may.
Yes.
So the one of the previous comments came about regarding snowball sampling. My devil's advocate comment would be that wouldn't that induce some sort of bias when you're using that sort of sampling method? Because in terms of the referrals from your candidates that you are interviewing, they may not understand the study completely and therefore refer you based on their perception. And if that continues, you could get a spiral of biasness induced into your results. So, snowballs, wouldn't snowball sampling be a little bit tendency towards biasness? That's my first question. And my comment was, or my comments regarding the earlier gentleman who spoke about the Department of Education, and it was mentioned about Stats SA. Stats SA does a lot of sampling purely because, as you mentioned in your earlier slides, Doc, because of the feasibility, because of budgetary constraints, and because of timelines when it comes to outputs. If you're doing a survey and you need to have the results analyzed, cleaned, and published within a month, it becomes very difficult to survey. If it's an economic survey, it would be very difficult to survey every single business in the country, a census basically. So yeah, sampling would depend on like you mentioned earlier in the evening, feasibility, budgets, manpower, and timelines as well. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much for the contribution. The bias thing I'm interested on, because in qualitative studies, you just, even if I don't use snowball, I just go purposive. Purposive is what I want. So in other words, I'm influencing the outcomes. So the outcomes would be what I want, not the reality. But there are checks and balances, and there are approaches. Now, I've referred to reflexivity, which is one way in which we are required to govern and to manage ourselves. Last week, somebody asked me a question, and he said, "Will people not tell me what they think I want to listen to, and will that not now mislead or misrepresent the study?" Then I realized after the workshop that the strategy that I was using, actually my design was participatory action research. In there was triangulation in data collection, because there was a participatory mapping. In participatory mapping there, people are actually plugging information on the map. In that way, how is biased included there? Or is that not one way in which you can manage biased? Because when people are in a group and they're saying that this village is, this store is here, or this river is here, or this mountain is here, all of them would agree on it. So bias is actually managed to an extent. And from there, I said we had TransactWorks. And TransactWorks, they go and point at things that they've plugged on the map. That this is the mountain that we were talking about. This is the river that we were talking about. This is a tree, or this is the shop that we were talking about. So the element of bias is eliminated through triangulation. So there are checks and balances that are there, that are built in this qualitative study. So I know that it's not a good thing to be biased, but we need to be, we triangulate or could use other mechanisms to try and manage that one. Thank you very much.
Okay, I wanted to add on the bias part. Like from what I've read, is like they explain like in every methodology or tool that you use, you have to anticipate bias, because in research, not everything is watertight. And from some of the books that I've read, they say as a researcher, whenever you write something, anticipate there's a weakness. So what you have to do is to try to cover or to know the weaknesses. For example, if I'm using snowballing sampling, it is a good thing that my research also has an element of community participation, where that referral add to the methodology, where the community is doing their part to help solve the problem that I'm trying to solve. So in my case, I think it was actually justified in why I wanted to use it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Are we ready now? Can we continue? We will still give you time to comment. Let's continue a little bit so that we will also see some examples that I have. And I see that we are left now with 40 minutes. I'll try and go more to examples if I see that we're running short of time. But thank you very much for engaging. So this becomes a lively workshop, and this is the reason why I love you. The quality of sample must be judged in terms of the procedure that produced it, that is in terms of its sampling design. Then sampling design refers to the part of the research plan that indicates how cases are to be selected for observation. I think this is what we're discussing about. Sampling designs, there are two major groupings, probability and non-probability. Probability sampling includes the simple random sampling, systematic, stratified, cluster, multi-stage, and probability proportionate to size sampling. Those are the 6 that are presented as examples. And the non-probability ones are accidental sampling, purposive sampling, quarter sampling, referral sampling. There you can have snowball or network sampling. Now, probability sampling here is described as, they're saying a basic principle for probability sampling is that a sample will be representative of the population from which it is selected if all members of the population have an equal chance of being selected into the sample. Kinelo and Shrin would enjoy this one. But a sample does not have to be representative in all aspects. It can be limited to only those characteristics relevant to a specific study. So only that which I think will contribute to my study. Yeah, those are the characteristics that I should consider. This characteristic is made possible through a process of random selection. You quantitative guys would understand that better. This is scientifically more acceptable, although not always feasible or economical. If you want the sample to be representative of the whole population, it is important that the sampling frame includes all or nearly all of the members of the population. So from a sample frame, you must select a population that would be representative because you want to generalize. That is what quantitative researchers are saying. Probability sampling has several advantages, including the removal of the possibility that bias on the part of the researcher will enter into the selection cases. By virtue of random selection, the laws of mathematical probability may be applied to estimate the accuracy of the sample, the accuracy to estimate. With probability sampling, one knows to which population the sample may be generalized, as well as the limits of the universality. Probability sampling designs are commonly associated with quantitative researchers and research, where the emphasis is on the quantification of constructs. And so that is the background. We're just making reference to it to show that it is different from qualitative research, because what we will look at now as non-probability will refer now to qualitative research. Non-probability sampling is not based on determining the probability of an element being included in the sample. Now, this design is often seen as more appropriate and economical and less complicated. So it doesn't force you to do too many things. Non-probability sampling designs are commonly associated with qualitative research, where the researcher's primary aim is to get an in-depth description and understanding rather than quantity of understanding. We want the quality. Some of the more frequently used non-probability sampling designs are discussed here. They're the ones that I'm going to show you, and I've got specific examples. And if I see that we're running short of time, then I will quickly run to the examples only. We start with accidental or convenience sampling, where in this design, the researcher simply selects a requisite number from cases that are available. That is convenience, only when it is available. Some authors call this type of sample convenience, availability, or haphazard sampling. To me, I think it is very haphazard. Many of us have participated in studies where someone would call us via telephone and ask if we would be interested in responding to some questions. I bank with Standard Bank, and sometimes from time to time they call me, can we ask you questions? They want to determine the quality of the services that they provide to you. They will ask you questions. They wouldn't have made an appointment. So it depends on my availability, because they first ask me, am I available? They haven't chosen me. They haven't known that they will come across me. They just go into the listing or to the database of the people that bank with them. Then on my availability, they then interview me. If I'm not available, they go and choose somebody from the database, and until they find all those that are available are the only people that they would gather data from. This is based on convenience. Convenience sampling techniques are easy and quick and inexpensive. They don't need planning. You just rock out and do it. But researchers should be cautioned against using this design, as it is only justified if a researcher wants to investigate characteristics of people, as in the above mentioned example of pre-testing questionnaires, but not for the purposes of making generalizations about the data. That is a caution. Now, I just want to see if I don't have an example like that one, so that we don't spend a lot of time just reading about the theory. Yeah. Here is an example where I've used accidental sampling, and where I've written with the red here in the middle, you would see it is where you would see a reference to accidental sampling. But let me start reading it from the top. The elder member of each household. This is an extract from one of the research report. The elder member of each household served as the respondent in each case. There were very few cases where the eldest members of the families could not be found or were not in a position to be interviewed. In such cases, the second eldest person of the household was interviewed. So, in other words, we would go and find who is available. And that availability is, if the second one is available, if the second eldest is available, we go to him. What about if that one is not there? Then the third one. So in other words, we dependent on their availability. So when it is convenient to be interviewed, then we would include them. So this is one case where we can attest that indeed accidental sampling is allowed, because this study was approved and it was passed. So the report contained this information. I'm just using it as an example that it is also possible. But the very common one that we always talk about is purposive sampling, and this is the one to which Mr. Magumbe referred to. In this form of sampling, the researcher researchers rely on their expert judgment to select units that are representative or typical of the population. Now, look, they use the statement representative. In other words, it is used in the context that the subjects will represent the population by providing information. Not that they are representative of everything in terms of the quantification, which leans towards a quantitative approach. So these units are representative or typical of the population. They come from that population, in other words. The general strategy is to identify important sources of variations in the population and then to select a sample that reflects this variation. And this is the reason why later on we will talk about the criteria of inclusion or exclusion that we were referring to earlier on. So in other words, the population would have a number of characteristics, or it is composed of various subjects. You would have in a population females, males, you've got children, you've got the disabled, you've got the elderly, you've got people playing various roles. So those criteria or those characteristics are of importance, or those are variations that need to be taken into account if you want to say that your sample is also representative. The major weakness of purposive sampling is that making an informed selection of cases requires considerable knowledge of the population before the sample can be drawn. So you will see at a later stage how, when I did not know people, I have tried to constitute a sample with the support from the study population itself. In this slide, I say the researcher advised the community to use proposed criteria for inclusion. So here it is when I didn't know people and I didn't know subjects to include, but then I developed criteria which the community, I think, used to advise to ensure who is included and who is excluded. Now it is like this. When determining the group or subpopulation, it was necessary to note that this population should be composed of people who would understand the subject of tourism development. This is where the topic was on the tourism development of sustainable tourism framework. I always made reference to this one. So there, people that should be included, indeed, they should understand the topic of research. It is tourism development. Essentially, such people had to have entrepreneurial skills, because in tourism you've got entrepreneurs who provide tourism services. Development facilitation skills, because tourism in nature is a developmental initiative, and skills related to tourism development. Furthermore, the group had to compromise leaders, because we were in a rural area, and that almost every community does have leaders. And because tourism is developed on land ownership, land users, land resource managers, and a variety. These are criteria that needs to be taken into account when you decide on the sample. So people that don't fall within this criteria, in either of these criteria, then cannot be included, because they would not be able to provide information that is going to assist in responding to the research question. Then there is also something that is referred to as justification for the criteria in relation to the research project. Based on the above discussion, this section provides reasons for deciding on the use of each of the identified criteria, whether you including people because of their age or excluding them because of their age and gender. And then disability, then you justify why do you want to ensure that the disabled are part and parcel of the population, the sample that you're going to collect data from. Why do you want landowners to be part and parcel? You know that all these subjects affect and are affected by what happens in tourism development. So this has been some of the processes that are followed, the development of the criteria, but further ensuring that that criteria is actually explained. So in the report, people would see the reason for inclusion. And at the end, I developed this table. And remember, my studies was qualitative, but I tried to indicate the numbers within the context of qualitative studies to show you the age group. You can see 18 to 29. Then you also have males, a category of males, and a category of females. Then you also have those criteria listed here on the far left. Then you could see how many you had in terms of the different age groupings, and you can see how many, yes, this is the age group as well, but you can see the totals on the far right there to show how many people participated there in total. In terms of the criteria, this is not the total number of the people, it's the total number of the criteria that has been included. You might have very few people, but due to the fact that a leader might have 2 criteria, it might be a leader but be disabled, or be a leader but also own land or manages land. So it means a person possesses a lot of criteria. Those then would be calculated and the total is put there. Different researchers may also proceed in different ways so as to obtain such a sample, and we can therefore not evaluate to what extent these samples are representative of the relevant population. For an example, researchers might be interested in studying the role of traditional leaders in the developmental local government in the Limpopo province. The researchers are interested in interviewing traditional leaders to get their views on the issue. Then, based on the expert knowledge, the researchers know 10 very influential traditional leaders, and then they decide these are the only ones that I'm going to interview. You see now, purposively having selected 10, purposively having selected traditional leaders, their views on how on this topic on local government. Oh, sorry, or on traditional. What is the topic? Yes, but the point is, we only selected traditional leaders and only those that are influential, and there were only 10. So judgmentally, using our own decisions. Let's just look at another example where purposive sampling was used. The eldest member of the household served as the response. Yeah, sorry. We want to show here that we purposefully, because there is only one principal traditional leader. You see the third statement there, because there is only one principal traditional leader, purposefully is going to be selected, because in the collection of data, then I said I must include in my respondents a traditional leader. Then it means that in every village, a traditional leader will be included, because my criteria for inclusion, I've put a criteria that a traditional leader should also be part of and parcel of the interviewees. You can engage me on this one. And the next one is referral sampling. This sampling technique is used for sampling target populations that comprise a small subgroup of the larger population. For an example, the members of a minority ethnic group that is widespread in a larger population, say for instance the Chinese or the Tanzanians or Ethiopians in South Africa, laid off mine workers, homosexuals, or illegal drug users and sellers, and so on. In this design, respondents who are initially contacted are asked to supply names and contact information of members of the target population. So if I don't know other drug dealers and I have only approached one drug dealer, then in order to get more drug dealers to respond to the study questions, then I will ask the first drug dealer that I come across, or those drug dealers that I know, who else can I interview? Because I don't know everybody. Then they say, no, we have got a group of drug dealers. Then this only happens if you have got a good relationship with them, because they wouldn't want to reveal who a drug dealer is. And this is the reason why referral here becomes very, very important. You would not succeed in these studies, I tell you, if you don't have good relationships, because these people might think that, oh, you want them to be arrested and so on. So then you must have indicated, no, I want to use information for my studies and that and that and that. There are two types of referral sampling techniques. The other one is networking sampling and the other one is snowball sampling. And Mr. Magumbe referred to the snowball sampling. Then let's start with the networking sampling one. In this design, respondents initially contacted in the screening in screening, a probability sample of the larger population are asked to identify members of the target population who are socially linked to the respondent. Linked, they are relatives, or they are neighbors or co-workers or friends. And I think it's more or less the example that I started earlier on. Let me move and see if I've got an example for this. Here is the example for a referral sampling. And I refer to this as a snowball. The researcher, now here, I said with purposive sampling, it was only the traditional leader was included. But when I've spoken to the traditional leader, then I wanted to know who the traditional healers are, because I didn't know them. When you go to a village, you don't know these people. So here, Mr. Magumbe, I'm going to support you very, very 100% here. You see, the researcher asked each traditional leader that he has interviewed for the names of local traditional healers. And in each case, he selected two to be interviewed. So in other words, when I'm in a village, I know that traditional leaders work hand in hand with the traditional healers in their own villages, or wherever they in which community they are found. There is no way that the traditional leader would not know them. So I knew that they would know them. Then I would ask, I don't know healers here. How can I include healers in my studies? How can I interview them? So he would tell me, oh, there are this and this and this and this. Then from those that he has told me, if there are 4 and I wanted 2, then I would ask him to direct me to the households of those 2 traditional leaders. So I would go there and collect data. So this supports actually what Mr. Magumbe said. And Mr. Magumbe's study leader must actually consult with me so that I can advise him. And this is what I wanted to present as the example of mixing probability and non-probability sampling designs. And I wanted to see if this indeed matches stratified sampling. And stratified sampling, I think, belongs to quantitative sampling design. These are the last sets of slides that I have, then we'll discuss and we'll close. There might be 5 slides. Multi-stage cluster sampling. Most frequently, cluster sampling involves sampling at 2 or more stages or steps. That is why this is called multi-stage cluster sampling. A form of random sampling is used in each of the sampling designs. And I want to say that, as opposed to what this statement is saying, that they use random sampling, I used systematic sampling and purposive sampling. But I perceived the sampling design to be multi-cluster sampling. For an example, a researcher might be interested in studying local governments' effectiveness in delivering public services. Now, here is what I've used. And later on, you would see when I try to dissect what I saw as cluster sampling, you would be able to advise and make a sense of what I'm going to present here. Systematic sampling was used in to interview respondents. Systematic sampling, accordingly, is usually employed in practice rather than simple random sampling. Now, you hear what they say. I wrote earlier on, I thought I would use random sampling, but then I read this one, I found maybe it is the best one that I can use. Bailey argues that systematic sampling is practical because it provides more information per unit of expense incurred by the researcher. Because this technique is simpler to perform, it may also reduce the level of errors recorded. Systematic sampling is more dependent on the sampling frame than random sampling. In systematic sampling, any ordering in the sampling framework is retained. I don't know much about this, but I've done this. What I'm describing here is part and parcel of what I've done in my study. The sampling design using multi-stage cluster sampling might look as follows. Now, in the next slides, I'm going to present what they talk about, and I populated what I've followed in all the stages that is defined, because these are multi-stages, because this is cluster sampling. In stage 1, one can use random selection of the provinces, but in my case, I used purposive selection of the provinces, and that province was the Limpopo province. That is where the study was located. But in that province, in stage 2, instead of using random again, I used purposive sampling to select the district municipality in the Limpopo, and this was the Vhembe district municipality. This is the former Venda homeland, colleagues, and the municipalities were not yet boundaries were not yet demarcated. So the study was located in the Limpopo, but it went down the second level to a district level, and in that district level, we can still go to the third level. In that district level, then again, where the author says random selection should be used again to select local municipalities in selected district municipality. Then I used purposive sampling then to select the local municipality instead of choosing the local municipality, because the local municipality was not there. It was the Chivase Tribal Authority. So this is under the present Thulamela local municipality. Those who know Vhembe district municipality understand that Thulamela local municipality has got its head office somewhere at Thohoyandou, and that the Chivase Tribal Authority is actually serviced by the Thulamela municipality. So this was level 3, and I purposefully selected the Chivase Tribal, the inhabitants of the Chivasa local area. And in stage 4, then I had to purposefully select neighborhoods. To me, neighborhoods, instead of choosing them randomly, I purposefully selected 8 neighborhoods. To me, neighborhoods were villages. Then it was 4 larger villages and small 4 villages. So it was in the 4th stage. But in the 5th stage, that is when I had to go to homesteads. And again, here, now they say systematic. Now I go quantitative. Then I did systematic selection of households within the selected neighborhoods. Then all households that were selected systematically instead of random selection. And remember, earlier on, the author said systematic sampling is more practical than random. So for me, it was very convenient to use this one. Then I had to select 100 households in 8 villages. So I would divide 100 into 8. Somewhere it was 12, somewhere it was 10 villages, and so on, so on, until I get somewhere it was 10 households or 12 households per village. Whether it's larger villages would have 12, smaller ones either 8 or 10 households. Now, purposive sampling was used to select streets from where households were selected. So I would go even to the 6th stage where I chose streets. Actually, 5th stage should have been streets, and 6th should have been households in streets. This method of sampling was a wide range of application, but in general is most useful in sampling a large number of units, especially when cost saving is important. So in the Limpopo, I couldn't do the entire Limpopo. I had to go down to the district. And into the district, I couldn't do the entire district, or in other words, the entire former homeland of Venda. I could go one tribal authority, or it was under the chieftainship of Chivasa. Then I went there. Even there, I couldn't do the entire tribal authority. Then I had to go to few selected villages, because there are many villages there. Then I decided to deal with 8. And that is how I also purposefully selected 8 villages. But when I went to streets, although streets were purposefully selected again, but the households themselves, systematic sampling. I don't know what type of sampling was this, and I was doing it for mixed method research. And yeah, you would read in red, I've written verbatim. I just took an extract and translated it into, it is a PDF document that I translated into a Word. Then you could read like this. Based on the question of logistics, 100 respondents, you see now at the 5th stage, were interviewed. These included traditional leaders, traditional healers, and ordinary villagers who were 18 years of age and above. You see now, that is part of the criteria. But the researcher believes that these sectors may uphold at least some aspects of the traditional culture of the Bavenda purposively, although when the households were selected, it was systematically. But the required sample was drawn from 8 villages at the 4th stage in the Chibasa area, figure 2 and 3, which was the 3rd stage as I presented above. But these villages were selected on the basis of their geographical location and size. 4 large villages, Pipidi, Mukura, Makonde, and Chitereke, were included, and 4 small villages, Tononda, Chiheni, Murangoni, and Chizibe, were chosen to constitute the sample. So the other criteria is some villages should be large, some villages should be small. The larger villages, further criteria, the larger villages were amongst those that enjoyed many modern conveniences like telephones, piped water, and electricity. So further criteria for inclusion. Small villages were less developed. One may attribute this difference in development to the fact that all the large villages are situated in lower lying areas, while the smaller ones are located in the more mountainous parts of the area. And those larger ones, some of them were even closer to, were more or less peri-urban, closer to Thohoyandou and Sibasa. Here, I did not include that one. It is logical to expect that larger, more populous villages will receive amenities first than the smaller ones, which are also in remote areas or in mountainous areas. By including both types of villages, more and less developed, contributes to the validity of the study. I don't know whether this is scientific, but I was trying to actually make sure that then those criteria actually can determine inclusion and exclusion. I want us to park here. The floor is open for comments. That presentation that I wanted to do, I actually did it because time was still available. The cluster sampling, multi-stage cluster sampling, and I tried to present in line with one of the study that I've done. So whether it confuses, whether it makes sense or whatever, this was passed. I'm saying this was my first project, and we have just used purposive sampling. I've mentioned it, and systematic sampling. I've mentioned it, and then there was a bit of snowball where there was reference by the traditional leaders to indicate which traditional healers are and where they are located, so that I can complete data collection to include traditional leaders, to include traditional healers, and to include villagers themselves who are not playing the role of leadership.
You know, some sampling techniques and methodology is a beautiful thing. There's no right and wrong answer. It just depends on the outcomes you're looking for. So, you know, what may seem unusual for one will be perfect for the others. So yeah, I love it. It's beautiful. Thank you.
We appreciate your teachings, but other than that, with methodology, with the little that I've done so far, as long as you can just justify the reason why you are taking this approach. And just a special shout out to Mr. Magombe. Praying for your supervisor to be a little bit less rigid, because honestly speaking, the resistance to those approaches, it doesn't make sense. So Yeah, wishing you all the best, and everybody else, please read up, and as long as you can justify, and yeah, and maybe just, you know, whether you are praying for your supervisors or you, in whichever way, whether it's a prayer or so that at least they can be a little bit lenient and be accommodating, because it's tough for us as students. But yeah, other than that, let me stop there. Thank you so much, Dr. Korombi. Thank you, Mema Honga as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Korombi. I think there's a comment on the chat about Stats SA.
They even say your household was chosen for this research in his complex. Sorry, when they come knocking. Does it mean they're taking some or they're leaving some? And the reason why okay, let me allow Shireen to speak. Shireen.
Yes, look, Stats SA, the bulk of their short-term surveys, both household and economic, are sampled purely because, like you mentioned earlier, time frames, feasibility, but most importantly, budget. If Stats SA had an infinite budget, they wouldn't conduct sample surveys. Okay. They'll conduct censuses. There are only two full censuses that they did conduct. One was the population census that took place a couple of years ago. The results were released, I think, about a year back. And there was another census of agricultural activity. I think it's called QOTA. Yes. And that was funded by the Department of Agriculture. Used to be DAF. I think they call something else now, DALRRD or something to that effect. But yes. Yeah, those two are the censuses. Most of the other surveys are sampled purely because of budget. Yeah, purely because of budget.
Okay, thank you very much. And you know why I asked if Stats does a full survey and they don't take a sample? Because I wanted to say, ideally, everybody would prefer that the entire population is then surveyed and no sample is taken. So that would present a correct picture. But the feasibility 100%. in terms of money, time, and it's not possible. The extent to which data need to be managed, huge volumes of data, then reports needed in a month or in a week or in a few months, it won't be feasible. But by the way, this is the reason why we have got an approach called sampling.
Doc, can I also add to that?
Yes.
The operation side is one thing, but when you start cleaning the data and analyzing it and classifying it, that is a mission on its own. I mean, that's a lot more time consuming. You get a lot of errors in the data. You get a lot of anomalies, outliers. And further to that, you don't have the IT technology to start processing this big data. I mean, you guys will know about the buzzword at the moment is big data. I mean, if you're talking about terabytes of data to analyze that, it's quite time intensive. So that's another part of the problem.
Thank you very much, Shireen. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. And I think we've come to the end of it.
Thanks, Dr. Korombi.